I'm going to talk to you briefly about Public Interest Public Sector Day, which might sound like it's strictly for public interest students, but in reality it's for all, really all first-year students, and to some extent second years as well. So what is it? PIPS Day is the annual Northern California Public Interest Public Sector Career Day. That's actually its formal name. It's a job fair and networking event is what it is. It's designed to increase student exposure to a vast array of legal employers and public interest organizations and government agencies. It's run by 9 different Northern California law schools, including an organization known as One Justice, which operates our pro bono program. Anybody are all of you first-year students, by the way? And all of you, any of you doing pro bono yet? Good. We'll talk about that because, as I may have said yesterday during the Halloween event, pro bono is very important for you to be doing now. There's opportunities for you to do it for just a few hours. And even though you're feeling overwhelmed, and I know all of you are, there's certainly opportunities for you to do that on the weekend and at the very least over winter break. Very important experience for you. It helps you stand out to employers. It helps you develop some of the soft skills you have not yet started to acquire in law school. And it really doesn't take that much of a time commitment. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about that at the end. Anyways, One Justice helps us run PIPS Day. And PIPS Day essentially has 2 components. The first is a series of formal interviews. Employers conduct on-site interviews with first-year and second-year students. These interviews are pre-screened. You apply for them in advance, which is why we're talking about this now. Because the point at which we'll be able to find out about the website of the employers is actually coming up pretty soon. Formal interviews are only available to the students who are students at the schools that help host this event. So the 9 schools that participate, right? The other component to PIPS Day is Meet the Advocates. Meet the Advocates, I'll be talking about in more detail later, but it's essentially a large networking event, okay? So for the moment, put Meet the Advocates out of your head. I'm just going to talk about the process of formal interviews. Cool. PIPS Days has an online application system. On December 15th, all of you will be receiving an email from the PIPS Day system. It will come from, well, an email address from the site, onejustice.org. Okay. This email will include a unique username and password tailored just for you that will allow you to access the site and see the list of employers participating in PIPS Day. If you do not receive such an email by December 16th, you must let me know. I'm not going to send another email saying, hey, by the way, did everybody get a unique username and password? That's why, another reason why we're having this event now. I'm letting you know, you should be getting an email from the PIPS Day system on December 15th. If you don't get it, you have to let me know. Use the username and password to access the website, and once you're there, you can review, as I said, all the employers. Unfortunately, you cannot yet apply. That happens on a later date. Still, on that date, you can go on, you can see which employers are applying, are coming. You can start creating your cover letters for those employers. And I would encourage you to do that as soon as you can. This is the text that you're going to be looking for when you go to the unique site, okay? When you see the list of employers, there's going to be a notation by their name that will indicate to you whether or not they're actually interviewing. They're attending the Meet the Advocates networking reception. And I think if they're actually interviewing, they will say I. If they're just doing the Meet the Advocate session, which again, I'll talk about in more detail later, there'll be an asterisk. So, and I think it says B if it's both. Anyways, it's not too hard to figure it out. The point is that they'll notate what they're doing, okay? Some of the organizations who are attending the Meet the Advocate session are hiring. It's just they would prefer to engage in, they meet students in that capacity. Why? Maybe they're looking for that aggressive student who's going to seek them out. And they want to see how well they do amongst all those students. And so every year there are employers who just go to Meet the Advocates. They don't interview. They don't set up interviews in advance because they want to get a sense of the person when they meet you. Okay, so just be aware of that. What that I think should tell you is that as you do the meet the applicant session or prepare for it, make sure you research the employers that you want to meet with so that you know a good bit about them before you go up to them at their table. Timelines. So, you can begin applying for interviews on January 3rd. Just back up again, you will get access to the site on December 15th. That'll have the list of employers. You can start applying on January 3rd. You will then have until January 20th at noon to apply. Noon Pacific time, if that's obvious. You have to submit your applications through the online system. Late applications will not be accepted. Here's the fun one. If you don't know where to apply, I encourage you to start thinking about the type of job you want to pursue, and you want to ask yourself a series of questions. First of all of your first years, I've said a couple of times in the last few weeks, if you want to meet with me about counseling issues with respect to public interest, this is the week to meet with me because I'm going on vacation for a couple of weeks. But any of the counselors in the office can really help you think about where it is you might want to focus your first job. Okay? But you basically want to start by asking yourself these questions. If you're not sure what you're going to focus on, right? What issues do you like to read about? What volunteer work do you gravitate towards? What classes grab you in college? Also start thinking about the skills that you want to develop, you know? Do you want a lot of client contact? Some organizations can pay interns over the summer and many cannot. That's another thing to think about. Can you volunteer? I'll stop here quickly to say that just because a job isn't paid doesn't mean you can't get paid. There's many opportunities that we'll talk about more in the spring semester about how first years obtain pay for the work that they do, even in public interest. Just table that subject for the time being. The takeaway from that is essentially, please set up an appointment with us in LCS before you start actually applying, so we can help you think about how to triage the various things that interest you. Does that make sense? Cool. That's great. The materials that you should submit: always a resume, always a tailored cover letter, a unique cover letter for every single employer. The smartest people that I know suffer from this problem. You just create a bunch of cover letters, and then you put them up online, and then you make this terrible mistake because what you do is you submit the wrong cover letter to the wrong employer. You're submitting 10, 12, 15, sometimes many more cover letters. So make sure that in the naming of that you name all the cover letters uniquely. What I would do is like cover letter, if it's Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, I put LCCR in parentheses after the cover letter, after the term cover letter. So that you know not to make that terrible mistake. It's really embarrassing to have an employer that you really have your heart set on read a cover letter explaining why you have your heart set on somebody else. Okay? Don't let that happen to you. Please make sure that you label each document specifically before you upload them to the system. Some employers ask about transcripts, not all do. If you're asked to submit a transcript, go to LCS Online. There's an unofficial grade sheet template. That's exactly what it's called. Wait, maybe. I think it's what it's called. It starts off with the word unofficial at the very least. Go there, fill it out. It's basically, you complete your transcript by entering in the grades and then computing what you're entering in your cumulative GPA. Most employers don't care about grades. But to the extent they do, strongly encourage you to use the unofficial grade sheet template that's available on LCS Online. You can withdraw your application. So you can start applying on January 3rd, right? You can withdraw it at any time up until January 20th at the end of the deadline. If you withdraw it before the deadline, it's as if you didn't even apply. The employer would be none the wiser. Again, the deadline is January 20th at noon. employers won't be able to see the applications before the deadline. Here's what happens. One justice collects all the applications from all the students at the various 9 schools, sends each of the applications to the various employers on like January 21st. And then those employers look at those applications and decide who they want to interview. So again, if you apply early, like say January 3rd, and you get all your applications done, and you submit them all on January 7th, that's great, kudos to you. But it doesn't benefit you at all. On the other hand, you absolutely do not want to wait until January 25th in the morning to submit all your applications. These systems crash all the time. Every year there's a problem. So if I were you, make sure my application is at least ready to go on January 19th. Everybody still with it? So obviously there's no advantage to apply early. If you have any problems, there's a help tab on the website, which you'll find out more about after you get access to the website and can enter in your information. You can also, there's a web address for the person who's in charge of the process, and they're very responsive to questions. So make sure if you have any concerns about it at all, you direct your questions to them. Every year, I get emails from students asking me about the PIPSA online application system, and I have to beg off because I frankly don't remember it. So make sure you go to the site, find the address, and you email me directly if you have any questions. In terms of the selection process, a couple of things that you need to know. Employers will screen the applications, as I said. You'll find out if you've been selected for an interview on January 27th, just 7 days after you apply. You will then have, this is important, you will then have until 3 p.m. on January 30th to cancel. Less than 3 days to decide to cancel. It's okay to cancel. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you don't cancel, you have to. I'll say that one more time. If you apply for an interview and you get selected for an interview and you don't cancel on time, you must attend your interview. Every year there's like a student or two who misses it. By and large, I found them to be like family emergencies. Okay? But if that's the case, you still end up having to write a letter to the employer saying, oh God, my aunt was really sick, blah, 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 whatever. And it's not always a fun thing to do. So make sure that you cancel if you can on time. Okay? You won't be able to schedule your own interview, unfortunately. It's a one-day event. Interviews happen all day, and there's so many people to schedule. The reality is you can't have a say. What I would tell you is, if you're going to apply, participate in this process, make sure you're available all day. That's one of the reasons why the event takes place on a Saturday, so that you're available all day. From 9 to 5:15, the interviews are only 25 minutes. Just make sure you're available all day and get selected for an interview. As I said, interviews are only 25 minutes. They're designed to be 25 minutes because every employer has like a half-hour time slot. 25 minutes for them to interview you, and 5 minutes for you to get to your next interview, and for them to prepare for their next interview. Does that make sense? So rapid flip. As I said, interviews start at 9, they run until 5:15. Okay. If you're not selected for an interview, one of two things will happen. First, you may be marked as pending for an interview, which is essentially like being waitlisted. What that means is the employer just had too many applications that they loved, and they simply couldn't meet with you. They didn't have themselves. If for some reason somebody cancels, by the cancellation date, which again I'll repeat to you is January 30th, okay, at 3 p.m. Your pending might go to an actual slot. If that happens, you will get an email from the PIPSA online system. If it doesn't, you won't get any email, which means you're not getting an interview. Maybe. And I say that because I want to describe the second way in which you can get an interview, even if you don't get a slot. Okay? Thank you, Christina. We're recording this for posterity, so maybe it makes sense to know my background noise. The second way in which you get a slot sounds a little bit daunting. I'm going to describe it nevertheless because every single year students get jobs through this process. What ends up happening is the event happens at Hastings. They host every year because they have a lot of space. And as I said, it starts at 9 o'clock. students line up to register before the